you get a message that invites you to put aside everything that might stand in the way of you realizing your true nature. One presence, one power, the divine within. End of story. I mean, that's the truth, but the story begins again with the second birth, which is the realization. First coming we talk about, was referenced by Jesus, but he talked about you must be born again. What does that mean? It means you must realize your true nature, which is not your body, not your story, not your thoughts. Nothing that, is you as a human being, but is more essentially you than all those other things. And then when you realize that anything that can be taken from you, and I know, and I'm not being insensitive, many of you must have losses in this room that are extraordinary and hard to accept. But it doesn't change this unrelenting truth that anything that can be taken from you is not what you are.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here with you. Are you happy to be here? I am happy. Many of you, I've seen several faces I haven't seen in years, and some I've never seen before. All of you, I'm really happy to see. It's a great day. I'm not speaking today. So, in 1994, I went to Kansas City, as did all the rest of the students who were in the ministerial program at Unity Village. And there I met Larry Schellink, who is our speaker today. So I've known Larry. Known him a long time. And one of the things I noticed when I was in school and ever since is that Larry's a sincere student of the very things he talks about. And that's what called walking the walk, not just talking it. So I think you'll be very impressed with Larry. I've always been impressed with Larry, and if you're not, act like it, okay? I don't know what he's going to say, but I will say that it's worth listening to. And I want to thank y'all for being here today because something tells me that this church is on the move and is growing and expanding in consciousness and in energy and in attendance. And so when you come here, you confirm that that's true. And I'm happy to see you all here. I'm going to ask Larry up. He'll have the floor, and let's give him a warm welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. It is so good to be here. I can't tell you, there's such a good energy here. There's love and there's connection and there's joy. So you've done well. You've all done well. I was here yesterday and had a little tour when there was nobody here and just admiring the building, the facility that you have that is so wonderful. God has given you a beautiful church. It's kind of the old school way of saying it. But then I remember, there was the guy that was out gardening and this man walked by and said, God has given you a beautiful garden. And the man said, yes, he has. And then he paused and he said, but you should have seen it when God had it all to himself. It takes teamwork, it takes willingness, it takes being willing to roll up your sleeves, it takes vision and commitment. And obviously you've put that in. And that's no small task to do that and to create something this magnificent. So I guess I should say something about Newsom, which is really why I'm here. No, we're not going to air out that dirt. There's none of that. No, I have to say this. This is, I thought there's many things I could say about the 2 years we spent together. And the 30 years since, but let me just give you a little insight. In our ministerial classes, we would have discussions, obviously, on these spiritual matters, and there would always be something that would be posed as a question or something to ponder, and then, the instructor would put it out for discussion, commentary, and so forth. So, oftentimes, when this would happen, there would be people that would raise their hands and say what they want to say. And then Newsom would always hold back, it seemed like, a little bit longer than anyone, and then the hand would go up, and he would share something with such depth and profundity and so inspired that after he was done, all the remaining hands would go down. So that's your minister. That's no small task that he's been here 23 years. You know how remarkable that is? Do you know? Many of you know some. I mean, Jesus only made it 3 years. Just saying, you know. But then Jesus didn't have HR, you know, so. Well, wait a minute. He had Herod rules. Maybe that was it. Okay. So I have a very serious topic for you today. Are you up for it? All right. Don't be disappointed. Let me start with a statement and see if we can just unpack this as we go. What cannot be taken from you is what you are. What cannot be taken from you is what you are. So many of us, if we started on the spiritual path in a traditional way, we followed some kind of a dogma, some kind of a doctrine, and it felt like we needed to learn a lot, didn't it? Study the scriptures, you know, learn these creeds, and just acquiring more and more knowledge, and it was a building up process in order to somehow feel that we now had this deeper understanding of what God is and our connection with God. And if we didn't feel that, then we often felt like, oh, we need to learn more. Has anyone been on that path? Another class, another workshop. You know, what else you got? I have to put this little lozenge in my mouth, I apologize, but I would rather do this than cough for 5 minutes. But here's the thing, as many of us have discovered, is that when we get to the point where we feel like we're absolutely filled, we can't get our mind anymore full of spiritual concepts, and those of us who've been on this path and been through seminary, and Newsom's been to more than one seminary, and I've read all the books, and I've studied all the faiths, and that there still was a feeling that I wasn't really touching the hem of the garment of truth. Anyone relate to this? God, I know so much. Shouldn't I feel different? Shouldn't I feel better? Shouldn't I be happier? Shouldn't I be more peaceful? Well, here's a little insight. And this is what Meister Eckhart said. That spirituality is not so much about what we add to ourselves, but what we subtract. It's a subtraction process. Well, why would that be? Subtraction process would be only if what we were holding was in the way of our connection with God. And that's exactly what many of us come to find out. That all those concepts about God have the experience of God at a distance. Can anyone relate to this? You understand, but you don't know. And remember Jesus said, you shall know what? The truth, and you shall be set free. He didn't say you'll study the scriptures. He actually sort of was a little bit sarcastic about those that were, really religious and following all their laws. He was more interested in getting people to turn within. He said, which is where the kingdom of God is. So I want to share a story with you that completely flies in the face of what I just told you, to let you know how I began this journey. Actually, before I got into unity, this was how I thought life should unfold. And I was following the teachings of my family, my parents. My parents went through the Depression, and their message to us kids was, get a good job, get a good education, don't be poor. It wasn't follow your heart, follow your bliss, none of that. And so I did that. My sister did the same thing. And so fast forward, I'm in my mid-30s, and I am standing on the deck of a home that's overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And we had I married the woman of my dreams, Denise, who I'm still married to, thankfully. And she had conceived a child, and we had this beautiful baby, woman of my dreams, looking out over the Pacific. And my friend from college came, and he was very successful, and he came and he walked up to the second floor, and the sun was setting. Pretty nice view, panoramic view. And he said, "Larry, you've made it. You have made it, dude." And I said, "Yeah, I guess so." But you know, inside, I checked in to see how do I feel about this? I mean, there should be this exuberance, just this extraordinary happiness, because this is the end of the line. This is the ultimate realization of the American dream. The promise should be fulfilled in how I feel. But it wasn't. It was the opposite. There was this ache, this emptiness, this feeling of lack that was still alive in me, and I was ticked off. I felt ripped off. What did I do wrong? And then here's how it goes. I looked at the house next door and had a better view. He wasn't looking. There was that one telephone line. You know that one telephone line that sort of is in the way. If I could just be over here. And that's how the mind works. And that's how it worked for several more years. Until one day, through the grace of God, there's no other explanation, other than the fact that I'd run out one particular plan and it didn't work, but the grace of God was saying, maybe there's something that you need to let go of. Because everything you've accumulated so far has failed you in your desire to find peace and happiness. And it just so happened that my partner, Denise, went to a memorial service at a Unity church around that time, and she came home with tears in her eyes after that memorial service, not from the grief, which was part of that, but with the joyful message. And she said, "You've got to come to church with me on Sunday." Well, I hadn't been to church in a long time. I was at the church, the prosperity gospel was all I was about, you know. And she said, "No, you really got to come." And so I resisted for as long as I could. And one Sunday she said, "Just come once, just come once." And so I went once. And the minister that day was talking about the prodigal son. Somehow, I don't know how, I related to that story. Because that was me. And the message, of course, at the end of the story is, come back home. And everything you've been looking for out in the world, you will find. Amen? Yeah. Ashe? What? Ashe. Thank you. What cannot be taken from you is what you are. So, isn't it funny how the truth seems to be unapologetic in bringing you the lessons that you need that you might know the truth? So fast forward a number of years, and after some years at Unity, I got this calling to be a minister, which was really interesting because my biggest fear, right above death, was public speaking. You want to be a minister? Yeah. So you like to speak in front of people? No, I hate it. So Denise and I, my wife and I, we went to Toastmasters and we did, you know, what you do in Toastmasters, which is people just love you just for opening your mouth and not falling down, you know, essentially. And so we did that, and little by little, and then one day I had to give a talk to be on the board, and so I had to get a talk in front of the congregation. And I remember it was a day kind of like today where I spent 3 days writing a talk. And I mean, I had it nailed down. And then when I got up to speak, I looked at my notes. It's sort of like, you know, is this Russian? Well, I don't even know what this is. And I began to speak. And that was confirmation that the Spirit can use you in a lot of different ways, even ways you never thought of before, even ways that you were afraid of before. And, you know, I have no misgivings or have no misperceptions about ministry. I did it to save my life. And I wear this around my neck because it's a symbol for inner joy. It's to remind me to live my life with joy. And the only way that I can do that on a consistent basis is by taking away everything that gets in the way of my joy. And I'm not talking about getting rid of people in my life and all of that. I'm talking about getting rid of concepts and ideas and things that I am attached to that get in the way of this natural feeling of joy. You and I all have this, but it gets covered over, doesn't it? By stuff, by life, by worries and concerns, and you know, it so easily just happens. And then suddenly we find that we're not looking at this kingdom within, this beautiful, spacious, joyful energy that we are, but we're looking at what our problems are and how to solve them. Well, I was a minister in California for 5 years, my first ministry, and when it came to an end, I had given 6 months' notice, and we started putting our resumes out to find a new job. You'd think after 6 months that wouldn't be too hard. I had a successful ministry, and I had a good reputation and so forth. But it wasn't to happen then. So Denise and I had to give her, you know how it is when you're moving and you think you're moving and your contract is coming up, that you have to be prepared. So we gave notice on our house and we prepared to move. And when the day came that our lease was up, we packed up our van and our little travel trailer that was a broken down piece of junk basically, and we were homeless. And we set off. And we had 2-week reservation at Blue Lakes in California near Lake Tahoe. And we arrived there and we camped for 2 weeks. And then we said, now what? And we reached out to the little Unity Church in Lake Tahoe that had about 15 people on a Sunday. And we said, do you want a guest speaker? They said, yeah, we'd love to have you to guest speak, and we'll pay you $125. Well, the long and short of that story was that they actually hired Denise, who was becoming ordained at the same time, to be the minister. Well, I didn't have a job, so I said, I need to get some work because, you know, there's bills to pay and there's mouths to feed. We had a 8-year-old son at the time at home. So, and we did get a place to live. They gave us a place to live. And so I said, I'm going to work at the gym because I like working out. So I'll go to the gym. And I worked out. And so there I was, 50 years old, and handing out towels. And, you know, here's your towel. Have a good workout. Instead of handing out the Dow, I'm handing out towels. You know, it's like, here it is. There it is. And I did that for a while. And then somebody came along and said, how would you like a job as a file clerk in the hospital? How much does it pay? Was my only question. And I did that. And then I was elevated to an administrative assistant. Well, anyway, for 2 years, I could not find a ministry job. And I was angry. You're like, wait a minute, God, do we have these conversations? Didn't you guide me into ministry? Didn't you like clear the path when the decision got made? 2 cars sold in one day, the business got sold, everything fell in place to indicate the way is clear, grasshopper, go forward. So why this? Anyone else? Why this? Why hast thou, what? Forsaken me. So that wasn't necessarily the best question because I felt more like a victim, but I did keep asking. So one day, my little son and I were walking in the hills above Lake Tahoe, mountainous terrain, and we stopped to rest. And when we sat down on a big rock just to rest. And my eyes fell down upon this crack in the granite. And out of this crack in the granite, it was a very small crack, probably a 1/16 of an inch, let's say, very small, was growing this perfectly formed little fern. Now, that might just be a casual observation most of the time, but in this instance, it had significance for me. Because I started to think, well, wait a minute, how did that happen? See, that was some adversity there. Now, I'm sure that fern would have loved for its seed origin to have blown it down, by the winds of good fortune into the forest floor below, where the verdant, the verdant soil and the loamy soil that's conducive to growth would have taken place. But I don't think it was cursed by that kind of regret. It was the adversity for that fern seed that made it grow right where it was. And I thought, I wonder if there's a lesson in this for me. Of course there was. The lesson is that you and I have within us this life force. Now, you may have some success with plants and maybe not such good success with other plants. But the life force that I'm talking about cannot be limited or obstructed or delayed. And I said, I need to grow right where I am. Right here. There's no mistakes. Now, you may not like it, and I sure didn't. But is it a mistake? Well, let me ask you this. Is it a mistake if you discover in the midst of adversity something that you didn't know about your innate potential, power, growth capacity, some aspect of yourself that can't be limited by situations, forms, people's circumstances? Would that not be good news? Well, it depends on why you're here. I don't mean why you're here today, but why are you here on this planet? Is it possible you're here to learn more about what you really are? Not what they called you, We came into this world, they stamped a name on us. We'll call this one Larry. We'll call this one Newsom. You're a boy, you're a girl. Grow up and be somebody. Get stronger, get bigger, acquire. It was an addition process, wasn't it, as we grew? And then even when we became adults, I'd like to have a bigger house, I want to have more money, I want to have a different partner, I want this, I want that, I want this. So we just get conditioned to think that life is about more and more and more. And then you end up getting a house overlooking the ocean with a beautiful wife and a beautiful baby. And you realize it's not enough. It's not nearly enough because it hasn't illuminated your truth. Jesus said, I'm the light of the world, and so are you. So how familiar are you and I with the light that we are? We could tell a lot of stories about the history, the biography, this has happened and that happened, and here's who I live with and my family, and what went wrong and what went right. But can we just get empty enough, which is so anti-Western commercialism? Costco doesn't sell this. That's why you come here. So you get a message that invites you to put aside everything that might stand in the way of you realizing your true nature. One presence, one power, the divine within. End of story. I mean, that's the truth, but the story begins again with the second birth, which is the realization of that. The first coming we talk about, was referenced by Jesus, but he talked about you must be born again. What does that mean? It means you must realize your true nature, which is not your body, not your story, not your thoughts, nothing that is you as a human being, but is more essentially you than all those other things. And then when you realize that anything that can be taken from you, and I know, and I'm not being insensitive, many of you must have losses in this room that are extraordinary and hard to accept. But it doesn't change this unrelenting truth that anything that can be taken from you is not what you are. There's one more little thing that I'd like to share with you, and it's how do we really know what's real? So it helps the mind when we're trying to grok something that seems so ineffable, something that, well, what is this true self, right? So I have little notes on this and make sure I get it right. All right, so there's 3 tests. You got your notebooks out? All right. And whatever is real must meet all 3 of these tests. First one, it cannot disappear. Number 1. So the metaphor is often ice melting into water. So when ice melts into water, obviously the ice disappears, right? And what's real remains when the temporary fades. So that's the spiritual part of that. And then the second thing is it cannot change. If it changes, then that's not real. So we go back to the ice becomes water, and so we know that the reality of the ice is not ice, the reality of ice is water, but then the sun comes out and then that water becomes what? Vapor or steam, whatever. So then you go, wait a minute now, so the reality now of ice is not even water, because now it's changed form again. And so, what is it, now this is basic science here, what is it that's in ice and water and vapor that's true? Yes, what's the molecule called? Bingo, H2O. So H2O is in the water, it's in the ice, it's in the vapor. Okay? And the last test is it can only be known by itself. If it's known by anything else, then it's not an absolute reality, it's a relative reality. So here's the deal. What in your experience does not disappear, does not change, and can only be known by itself? Spirit. But do you know spirit? And how do you know spirit? Let's break it down, shall we? I've got 5 minutes left. I'm watching that clock. So let's think about it. When we think about who we are, just with normal understanding, we would say, well, who am I? Well, I have a body, right? Okay. Anyone notice any changes in your body? Oh, okay. Well, let's not go there, right? Okay. In fact, Newsom and I, just as an aside, when we see each other, we're considerably older because it's like 5-10 years. But here's the beauty of it, is that friendship that was established a long time ago remains unchanged. When we're together, it's still heart to heart. Something worth preserving, something to be grateful for. So the body's changed. What about your name? Anybody ever heard of a name change? Okay, I'm going to hit it hard now. What about your gender? Could it be changed? You can change it. Wait a minute now. It's my thoughts. Anybody change your mind? See, here's the thing. So we can get so identified internally and not in the spiritual way, in our mind, that we think we are in here. We think there's a Larry person in here. We've never really found this Larry person, and we start to, what's that word? Not unpack, but deconstruct. We start to deconstruct and go, wait. Because you think, oh, if you think thoughts, well, let's take feelings as those are stronger, like, I'm angry. Okay. So here comes anger. There goes anger. Anger's gone. Guess who's still here? I am. I'm still here. Another good metaphor, and this will be the last one. Time is running out. The mirror. Think about a mirror. This is a good one. So when you were 5 years old and you looked in the mirror, you saw a 5-year-old face, right? 10 years old, there's your 10-year-old face. 15-year-old face. You will go look at it now, it's going to be your current face. When you were joyful and when you were celebrating and everything, the mirror reflected whatever your face was expressing. And yet, the mirror was unchanged. Think of your true self. It's seen so much. All this stuff that's happened in our lives. It's been there. It's been the seeing, but never the seen. And it shall always be that. And the seeing is immune from the travails of life, from the vicissitudes of life, for getting what you want, not getting what you want. She loves me not. I'm having good days, I'm having bad days. That seeing, that eye, that is single eye, the light of consciousness, remains untouched. Anything that can be taken from you is not who you are. Let's pray. So we thank this truth that will set us free if we allow it to deepen in us, that we may recognize and have the veil lifted from our seeing, that the truth of us, as we were created, is not a form. It has no beginning date and no ending date. Even Scripture says we were made in the image and likeness of God. What is the image of God? The likeness of God is invisible, intangible, unseeable. And if there was anything that we might rely on, it's the burning bush statement, where Moses turns away and the bush is burned and it is unconsumed. We are that bush. We are that which cannot be lost, cannot be diminished, stained, tainted, diminished in any way. To know this is to be free. To know this is to live a life of love, peace, and joy. May it be so. Amen.
I hope you got something out of today's service. We intend to bring you things that will help you in your life become more of who you want to be, give you the freedom of forgiveness and the hope of expectancy that your life will unfold in a way that brings you joy, happiness, and is a contribution to the world. If you would like to contribute to this ministry, please go to unitytriangle.org, hit the donate button, and it will lead you into an easy way of doing that. We thank you for your attention and look forward to seeing you again here.